So welcome to First Parish Brewster. We are a Unitarian Universalist welcoming congregation of people of diverse philosophies and beliefs, people of various cultures and races, sexual orientations, gender identities, abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your path, may this be a place of rest and restoration on your journey.
Good morning. This year at GA was my 5th year at GA and really enjoyed it. One of the things that I found at GA this year that is always interesting are the workshops, and there was a workshop that really caught my eye. It was one that was run by Christine Conklin concerning the oceans and the problems that are occurring with our oceans. It was titled Justice for Our Oceans. She spent 4 years studying the effects of global warming, global changes, and pollutions from all the countries around the oceans. Of significance to understand is our oceans are 70% of the surface of the earth and are 70% of the oxygen generation that we all breathe. So our oceans are really important to us. She has a book that's coming out. It's an atlas of all the findings that she did in that 4-year period, and I'm anxious to get a hold of that book and see in depth as to some of the things she talked about in the workshop. Another thing that I find interesting is being a delegate at GA. GA has business meetings, and this year we voted on members, new members to the UUA Board of Trustees, bylaw changes, and sponsored social issues concerning this year white supremacy, voting barriers, and our destruction of democracy. I found that very interesting and also very informative. Some of the things that we here at First Parish Brewster are holding very close to and working on ourselves. It also, the speakers at the Ware Lecture are always very interesting. And this year, Stacey Abrams and Desmond Meade shared that honor and gave a talk on voting barriers and white supremacy. Again, those two individuals did an outstanding job of presenting a lot of information that was helpful in trying to fight these particular activities that are going on in our country. And the Sunday service is always something that's of interest. There's a lot of great music in the choirs and local ministers. This year it was designated to be in Milwaukee, so some of the ministers from the Milwaukee area were speakers at the church service. Found that to be very interesting. And finally, GA really gives me and anybody that attends the opportunity to really understand the overall movement of where Unitarian Universalist is heading and some of the things that we're tackling to try to change in terms of social justice and other remaining things. This is always a good opportunity to find that out at GA. Thank you for listening to what I had to say about GA, and good luck and see you. Bye-bye.
This year's Ware Lecture featured Stacey Abrams. Barbara Sykes came over to my house and we had strawberry shortcake, and then we watched Stacey. Stacey Abrams is an excellent public speaker. Turns out her parents were both Methodist ministers, so I think she grew up in a tradition of public speaking skills. She told the story about her disappointment at the outcome of the election for governor in Georgia. She lost. She reconciled her disappointment with the idea that she realized she had a national audience for her vision for our world. This helped her through her disappointment. I thought that was an uplifting message. I thought in my own life, when has life brought me lemons, and how did I learn to make lemonade? Stacey Abrams told that story beautifully. Thank you to the Ware Lecture.
Good morning, friends. I'm John Kelb, and my pronouns are he and him. This year was the first time I attended General Assembly. I had intended to attend 2 previous GAs, but life had other plans. I have attended many district meetings in the past, so I'm no stranger to UU gatherings. Participating remotely was convenient, and the pre-recorded workshops continue to be available. Here's a couple short descriptions of workshops I watched. Milwaukee is the most segregated metropolitan area in America. Individuals in Milwaukee, in particular, were hampered with segregated housing patterns based on laws that had been passed both nationally and locally. The Black business district called Walnut Street was destroyed by the city's first urban renewal program, and the promise to rebuild was never met. The Justice for Oceans workshop seemed like a pertinent subject for Cape Codders. The ocean absorbs much of the carbon dioxide that is emitted into the atmosphere by the burning of fossil fuels. However, that results in a more acidic environment for the living organisms, which adversely impacts their reproductive systems. The ocean is also suffering from poor waste management, polluting our seas with toxic chemicals and plastics. The plastic breaks into microparticles that get into the bloodstream of tiny organisms and hence into our food supply. The challenges of social justice and the degrading environment are enormous, and it is easy to be discouraged. Yet, there are successes in life to be celebrated, and the GA worships were wonderful and joyous. The music was uplifting and inspiring. Life can be simultaneously wonderful and terrible. Being in a UU community helps me find balance. Friends, let's work together to strengthen our community and widen the circle. Thank you.
This year, my second GA online, I had a better strategy. I focused on those presentations and workshops that felt particularly relevant to me this year in my leadership role as president of the Board of Trustees. I nurtured my spirit with wonderful worship and uplifting music. I achieved a better balance this time. I'd like to share a few of the pearls that I picked up over 5 days of General Assembly, along with my own thoughts, woven together like one of Elenita Muniz's tapestries or Barb Draper's quilts. I felt a lot of UU pride, a lot of First Parish pride, as our efforts to learn better, to be better, were lifted up. For example, I learned that our congregation, along with 450 others, contacted over 3 million eligible voters as part of UU the Vote. We made a difference. I want us, our beloved community, to continue to make a difference. Post-pandemic, we have an opportunity we've never had before. Daniel Burnham said, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir the blood and probably will not be realized. Make big plans. Aim high and hope and work. Remember that future generations are going to do things that would stagger us. We can do hard things. We did move to online services. We have the creativity, resources, and agility to continue to do big things. Now is the time for strategic planning. We must return to widening the circle, a book I highly recommend, which was our board's common read. The lessons we learned here will help us develop a multi-channel, multi-platform church. There is no going back. What is a multi-platform church? We do not know all the answers yet, and we are going to be experimenting. We do know that during these past 17 months, our circle is wider. Perhaps we will have 4 vibrant campuses: in, out, on, and through. In is in person, inside. Out is in person, outside. On, online, in real time, and through, online, pre-recorded, on demand throughout the week. We must be willing to be bold and take risks. We can become more generous, being a progressive beacon, supporting and growing an anti-racism justice ministry, making rooms for families and folks of differing abilities. I dream of being courageous, truly inclusive, and grateful. I dream of making our mission and vision manifest in the world. I ask you, what do you dream of?
Hi, before I share my reflection, I just want to give thanks to Rand Burkert, who was very helpful to me in preparing the reflection and providing some input. As an environmentalist and a member of this congregation, with its long history of allyship with the Wampanoag, I was drawn to GA programs focused on Indigenous people and their relationship with the natural world. Attending the daily grounding worship with First Nation peoples connected me to the heart of their worldview. However, the most eye-opening experiences came from 2 programs on the rights of nature. My association with the Wampanoag has taught me that nature does and should have rights, that we cannot separate ourselves from the trees, birds, plants, water, and sky that surround us. I was distressed to hear again about extractive practices that are destroying much of the natural world and contributing to the environmental crisis that threatens our entire planet. However, I was encouraged by presentations from advocates, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, working to reverse the callous disregard by both government and non-government organizations for the rights of nature, especially those pertaining to rivers and other bodies of water. Advocates have been able to use legal arguments successfully in protecting and restoring these rights, mainly in the Pacific Northwest and the southwestern United States. So I wondered if their work could inform the efforts of the Wampanoag to reclaim land and bodies of water taken from them by colonists and other settlers. As historic allies of the Wampanoag, our congregation might offer to partner with them, using the experiences of advocates in their rights of nature work. I believe there is merit in further exploration, with this caveat emphasized by one of the presenters. In an ally relationship, it's important to listen to the voices of Indigenous people, to honor their perspective, and to show up, regardless of the tasks required, demonstrating deep, consistent commitments in big and small ways.
Thank you to all who shared their reflections this week to help people to have a little bit of a taste of General Assembly. Maybe it has piqued your interest about going next year. So as you've heard, this year's General Assembly covered a wide range of topics. This was the 2nd year of having a virtual General Assembly, and online participation meant that many people who had never attended before were able to, thanks to generous scholarships and the ease of being able to participate from home. What this means for us is that the future is multi-platform, as you heard Susan Smith say. That as congregations, we need to look at the ways that we are making congregational life accessible because not everyone is able to enter into our doors. Parents and other working folks may want to serve on committees, but if they're scheduled during the day or they require in-person meetings, that may make it difficult for them to attend. Also, many of you go to Florida during the winter. The more we can make our campus accessible for both online participation and in-person participation only serves to benefit us. We do have a newly formed tech team that has begun the work of assessing our buildings and assessing what kind of needs we have to make multi-platform church life accessible, and also not requiring a staff member to be present once we return to our buildings in fall. So look forward to hearing more from them in the future. There were over 4,000 attendees of this year's General Assembly, and I know that the UUA has realized making General Assembly as accessible as possible when we return to in-person General Assemblies is important. Your staff and leadership has realized this as well. And this year, trauma was the focus of many of the workshops that were offered. Coming out of the pandemic, it's important to remember that for many of us, it has been traumatic. The workshops called us to notice what was going on in our bodies, to check in with ourselves. For many people over the last year, this pandemic has been a traumatic experience. It's been incredibly difficult for people with mental illness, for people who are isolated, for people who are medically fragile. And it's important to remember that though many of us are vaccinated right now, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden our bodies aren't still carrying that trauma. And so your invitation today is to notice when you read or hear reports of things like the outbreak in Provincetown and the Delta variant, to notice what's going on in your body. Because as I've said since the beginning of this pandemic, we will make it through this together, but we will be changed. We have been changed. Maybe you've noticed the ways that you or the people you love have been changed by this, and I think we will be discovering this for years to come. So please make space to check in with your bodies. Make space to care for your bodies. At GA this year, there was an Article 2 study commission that was formed with the goal of revising our principles and sources. Our principles and sources were last revised in 1987. There was an attempt to revise them in 2010, but it didn't pass. So for the next 2 years, this commission will be speaking to Unitarian Universalists all over the nation and the world to talk about what are the driving principles of our faith and the sources of our faith. Many people have asked when the 8th principle will be added to our principles, the 8th principle that we just voted to pass this past June. And this is part of that process, this Article 2 study commission, although the exact wording may be different when they are proposed at General Assembly in 2 years. And this year at General Assembly, there was some dissent in our denomination with a contested election for the Board of Trustees of the UUA. And overwhelmingly, the vote showed that people are supportive of the course that our denomination is taking, the course of dismantling white supremacy and countering oppressions as a denomination. This is connected to the report Widening the Circle of Concern, released last year by the Commission on Institutional Change. Susan Smith held it up in her reflection. And as she said, your board and also your Committee on Shared Ministry, your Children and Youth Ministries Committee, and your directors all read this report over the last year. This report informed a lot of the work that your staff and leadership did last year and will inform the work we do this next year. It called us to deeper levels of engagement with our anti-racism work and our countering oppressions work. If you haven't read it, it's available for free online if you just search for Widening the Circle of Concern under the UUA's website. And at General Assembly, we got to hear from leaders in our denomination about what it means to us as a faith to have congregations taking on the work of studying this and really committing to the work of dismantling the ways that white supremacy shows up in ourselves and in our congregations. This General Assembly reminded us that change is here, and what we do to embrace change, what we do to help build the future that we dream about, is the work that matters. And this will be a question as we begin regathering this fall. What is the work that we are called to as a congregation? Having just passed the 8th principle, having voted in a covenant, now is our time to dream about our future together and what we want for that future. To make space and check in to make sure that things are accessible as possible. To make space and check in with our bodies and to dream big about the future we want as a community and as a faith. There is work to be done, and I hope you will continue to join your leadership and your staff and each other as we do this important work together. Amen, and blessed be.